I was clinically dead for 3 minutes and 42 seconds. My name is Amara Chen, and for 15 years, I worked as a trauma surgeon in Chicago. I saved lives. I held beating hearts in my hands. I looked death in the face hundreds of times and always believed I understood it. But what I experienced on March 7th changed everything I thought I knew about life, death, and why some of us feel fundamentally different from everyone around us. I never believed in those near-death experience stories. Honestly, I thought they were hallucinations, the brain's final desperate fireworks. I was a scientist. I dealt in facts, in blood types, and vital signs. But what happened to me that night wasn't a hallucination. It was the most real experience of my entire existence. And if you've ever felt like you don't quite belong in traditional religious spaces, if you've sensed that the church was performing rather than connecting, if you've been told you're too questioning, too different, too much, or not enough, then what I'm about to share will finally make sense of your entire life. Because you're not broken, you're chosen. But they won't tell you this in church. They can't. Because what I learned on the other side threatens everything institutional religion is built upon. It happened during a mass casualty event. 7 victims came in from a highway pileup within 20 minutes. The ER was chaos. Blood everywhere. Screaming. The smell of burnt metal and flesh. I was working on a teenage girl with a punctured lung when I felt a sharp stabbing pain radiate down my left arm. I knew exactly what it was. Cardiac arrest doesn't knock first. I remember thinking how absurd it was. Me, the one who saves others. I tried to speak, to tell someone, but the words wouldn't come. My vision tunneled. The sounds of the ER stretched and distorted, like someone was slowing down a recording. Then everything went black. And then I wasn't in the ER anymore. I was standing in a space that defied description. It wasn't a place exactly. It was more like being inside light itself, if light could breathe and pulse and hold you. The air, if you could call it that, shimmered with colors I'd never seen before, hues that don't exist in our spectrum. Golds that sang, blues that felt like comfort. Everything was saturated with an overwhelming sense of peace that made every happy moment of my life feel like a pale shadow. I wasn't stepping on anything. I was gliding, suspended in this luminous expanse. And I felt lighter than I'd ever felt, like every burden I'd carried, every expectation, every judgment I'd internalized had simply dissolved. Then I heard a voice, not with my ears. It resonated inside my chest, like someone was speaking directly into my soul. Amara. I turned, and there he was. I knew immediately it was Jesus, though he didn't look like any painting I'd seen in church. His presence was immense, radiant, and his eyes held an ancient compassion that made me want to weep. Not from sadness, from recognition, like I'd known him my entire life but had forgotten. "You've been confused," he said. His voice was warm, gentle, but it carried absolute authority. "They told you that questioning meant doubt, that your mind was a threat to faith, that being gay meant you couldn't truly know God." My breath caught. Even in that place, even surrounded by that overwhelming light, the old shame tried to surface. I'd left the church years ago. I'd been told repeatedly that I couldn't be both faithful and authentically myself, that I had to choose, that God's love came with conditions. "They were wrong," he said, and the words landed like a physical sensation, like warmth flooding through me. "You weren't broken, Amara. You were being prepared." "Prepared for what?" I whispered. "To be a fire carrier." I didn't understand. "A fire carrier?" He stepped closer, and the light around him intensified. There are people chosen not to maintain religious systems, but to ignite authentic faith. They see through performance. They hunger for truth, not tradition. They're rejected by institutions because institutions fear what they can't control. But I don't call the comfortable, Amara. I call the ones who've been burned by religion so they can carry real fire to others. He gestured, and suddenly I could see them. Thousands, maybe millions of people scattered across the world, each one carrying a light inside them, a flame that flickered but refused to go out. Some were in churches, sitting in pews looking empty. Some were alone, crying, convinced they'd been abandoned by God. Some were angry, railing against the hypocrisy they'd witnessed. But every single one of them carried this light. "These are my fire carriers," he said. "And you've always been one of them. That hunger you've felt your entire life, the one that church services couldn't satisfy, that wasn't restlessness, Amara. That was my spirit calling you deeper than performance religion could ever go." Tears streamed down my face. Or at least I felt them. I'm not sure I had a physical face in that moment. But the relief was overwhelming. That gnawing feeling I'd had since childhood, the sense that something was missing in every sermon, every worship song, every altar call. It wasn't me being difficult. It wasn't me being too intellectual or not spiritual enough. It was a divine hunger that shallow religion could never feed. There are signs, he continued. 7 signs that mark fire carriers, 4 that identify them, and 3 that activate their calling. I'm sending you back, Amara, to tell them, to help them understand why they've always felt different. He placed his hand over my heart, and I felt a rush of energy, like electricity and warmth and purpose all colliding at once. The first sign is what you've already experienced. Unexplainable spiritual hunger. Fire carriers aren't satisfied with surface-level faith. They crave authentic encounter, raw truth, genuine connection with the divine. Church services feel hollow because they're meant to. You're not wired for performance. You're wired for presence. I nodded, understanding washing over me. Every time I'd sat in a service feeling empty while others seemed moved. Every time I'd questioned why the words felt scripted, why the worship felt manufactured, I'd thought something was wrong with me. If you've ever felt spiritually restless in religious spaces, he said, looking directly into my eyes, this is why. You're not meant to be fed by systems. You're meant to be fed by me. The second sign, he continued, is discernment between truth and performance. Fire carriers can sense when preaching is about control versus genuine love, when worship is theatrical versus authentic, when prayer is manipulation versus connection. This isn't cynicism, Amara. It's a spiritual gift. You see through religious facades because I've given you eyes to see what's hidden beneath. I thought about all the times I'd been called critical, negative, too analytical. How I'd been told I was letting my mind get in the way of faith. How pastors had suggested I needed to be less questioning, more obedient. They call you critical, he said, as if reading my thoughts. But I call you discerning. There's a difference. Critics tear down. Discerners protect. You sense manipulation because I need people who can't be manipulated. You question control because I need people who value freedom. The validation hit me like a wave. Permission to trust my spiritual instincts. Permission to believe that what I'd sensed wasn't rebellion, but a gift. The third sign is persecution from religious systems. Fire carriers threaten structures built on fear and control. You were told you couldn't be gay and loved by God. Others are told they ask too many questions. Some are rejected for their race, their poverty, their past. But here's what they don't understand. Your persecution proves your calling. Systems attack what they can't contain, and fire carriers can't be contained. His voice grew firmer, more passionate. I judge hearts, Amara, not identities, not orientations, not questions, hearts. And your heart has always sought me, even when religion pushed you away. Especially when religion pushed you away. I felt something break open inside me. Years of internalized shame, of believing I had to choose between authenticity and faith, of thinking God saw me as defective. It all cracked apart under the weight of his acceptance. The fourth sign is supernatural encounters and divine communication. Fire carriers receive direct messages because they're meant to carry direct truth. Dreams, visions, answered prayers that defy coincidence. Synchronicities that feel orchestrated. These aren't accidents. These aren't imagination. These are divine preparation. I speak to those I'm sending out, Amara. I always have. I thought about the dreams I'd had, the sense I'd get before major life decisions, a knowing that I couldn't explain, but always trusted. The times I'd prayed and felt an almost tangible response, a peace that made no logical sense given the circumstances. Your experiences aren't random, he said. They're training. Every encounter, every moment you felt my presence, it was preparing you to carry truth to others who've been told God is silent, who've been convinced they're not worthy of divine communication. You'll show them otherwise. He paused, and the light around us seemed to pulse with his words. These first 4 signs identify fire carriers. They help you recognize who you are, why you've felt different, why religion hasn't satisfied the hunger inside you. But, Amara, there are 3 more signs. 3 signs that don't just identify fire carriers. They activate them. The intensity in his voice increased, and I felt my entire being lean forward, desperate to know. Knowing you're chosen is just the beginning. Understanding your difference is only the first step. The next 3 signs reveal your mission. They show you not just who you are, but what you're meant to do. And once you understand those, everything changes. He looked at me with such profound love that I felt my very existence validated in a way no human had ever made me feel. "I'm sending you back now," he said. "You'll wake up in that ER. They'll tell you that you were dead for 3 minutes and 42 seconds. But you and I know that in those minutes, you learned more truth than most people encounter in a lifetime. You returned from this encounter with a mission. And if you're a fire carrier, Amara, so did you. I wanted to protest, to stay, but the light began to fade. His presence grew distant, and then I heard the sharp, mechanical beep of a heart monitor. My eyes opened. Fluorescent lights, the antiseptic smell of a hospital, a colleague's face above mine, pale with relief. "Amara, oh my God, Amara, you're back." But I wasn't the same Amara who'd coded on that ER floor. I'd been given a message, a mission. And if you've recognized yourself in these first 4 signs, if you've felt that unexplainable hunger, that discernment, that persecution, those supernatural encounters, then you need to hear what comes next. Because the final 3 signs don't just tell you who you are, they tell you what you're here to do. And if you're a fire carrier, what comes next changes everything. As I stood in his presence, suspended between heaven and earth, he showed me why fire carriers often feel so desperately alone. The warmth of that divine light still lingers in my memory. And in those sacred moments, I understood something I had spent years questioning. The first 4 signs revealed your identity as a fire carrier. These final 3 reveal your mission. And I need to warn you, sign 5 was the hardest truth I had to accept. You see, after my near-death experience, I thought returning to my church community would be natural. I expected to find home among people who spoke of God's love. Instead, I found myself sitting through services that felt increasingly hollow. Week after week, I watched as pastors prioritized comfort over truth, as congregations nodded along to messages that soothed rather than transformed. The fire burning inside me grew more restless with each passing Sunday. Sign number 5 is this: you carry a burden for truth that makes comfort feel like betrayal. I remember the Sunday I finally spoke up. The sermon had been about maintaining appearances, about being good ambassadors for Christ in our community. Something inside me snapped. During the fellowship hour, I asked our small group a simple question. When did Jesus ever prioritize looking good over loving people authentically? The silence that followed was deafening. I saw discomfort flash across faces I had known for years. One woman actually stood up and walked away. That's when I realized this wasn't rebellion. This wasn't pride or a critical spirit like some had whispered. This was the divine fire that had been placed in me, a fire that refused to be contained by human systems that valued reputation over radical love. If you've ever felt restless in religious spaces that prioritize appearance over authenticity, you know exactly what I'm describing. That restlessness isn't a flaw. It's your fire carrier identity asserting itself. You were designed to burn for truth, and truth can't coexist with performance. Jesus himself told me during that encounter, the fire carriers I choose can't settle for comfortable lies. They burn too hot for that. Their calling is to disrupt systems that have replaced my heart with their rules. I've been called divisive more times than I can count. I've been labeled judgmental, rebellious, even dangerous. But here's what I learned in that divine presence fire carriers throughout history have always disrupted religious systems. Not because they're trying to destroy, but because authentic love matters more than institutional law. Jesus overturned tables in the temple for the same reason. The fire he carried couldn't tolerate systems that burdened people instead of freeing them. And if you're carrying that same burden for truth over comfort, I need you to hear this. You're not wrong. You're not too much. You're exactly what God designed you to be. That discomfort you feel in spaces that prioritize appearance isn't telling you to tone yourself down. It's telling you that you're in the wrong room. But accepting this truth comes at a cost. Which brings me to sign number 6. I lost friends when I started living from this place of authentic fire. People I had known for decades slowly distanced themselves. Invitations stopped coming. Text messages went unanswered. My own family struggled to understand the transformation they witnessed. My mother once told me with tears in her eyes that she didn't recognize me anymore. Those words shattered something inside me. Sign number 6 is this. You will experience sacred isolation that others can't understand. The loneliness was crushing at first. I would lie awake at night, questioning whether I had made terrible mistakes. Had I become too extreme? Was I being punished for speaking truth? The isolation felt like a void, dark and consuming. I missed the easy laughter of shallow fellowship. I missed belonging somewhere, even if that belonging had been based on pretense. But during one particularly dark night, when I was crying out to God in desperation, He spoke to me again, not audibly this time, but with a clarity that pierced through my anguish. Fire carriers walk the narrow path. Not everyone will understand the divine fire you carry. Your isolation isn't punishment, it's preparation. I opened my Bible with trembling hands and found myself reading about the prophets. Every single one of them was misunderstood. Jeremiah wept alone. Elijah fled to the wilderness. John the Baptist lived in isolation, preparing the way. They weren't rejected because they were wrong. They were set apart because the fire they carried was too intense for the comfortable systems around them. And then I understood my solitude was sacred. God was purifying my fire in the quiet places. He was separating me from systems that couldn't contain the truth He had placed within me. He was teaching me to find my validation in Him alone, not in the approval of religious communities that feared transformation. If you're in this place right now, if you've lost relationships because of the fire you carry, I need you to reframe your loneliness. This isn't rejection. This is divine appointment. God is clearing space in your life for the ministry He's preparing you for. He's teaching you to burn with authenticity rather than dim your flame for acceptance. But I also need you to hear this. Your isolation isn't forever. Which brings me to sign number 7, the one that changes everything. As my near-death experience was ending, as I felt myself being pulled back toward my body, Jesus gave me final instructions. He looked at me with such love, such fierce tenderness, that I still feel it in my bones. And what He said to me then is the same thing He's saying to you right now. He said, "Stop hiding the fire I placed in you." I felt tears streaming down my face, or was it my spirit weeping? I don't know, but I felt the weight of every moment I had dimmed my light, every time I had made myself smaller to fit into spaces that were never meant to contain me. "Your fear of rejection is natural," He continued, His voice both gentle and commanding. "But your calling is supernatural. I didn't choose you because you're perfect. I chose you because you're willing." The overwhelming sense of divine commissioning that flooded through me in that moment is beyond anything language can capture. It was terror and exhilaration, humility and authority, all at once. I realized I had been waiting for permission from people who could never give it, while the Creator of the universe had already declared me chosen. Sign number 7 is this. You are being divinely invited to step into your calling despite your fear. This is your moment. Right now, as you're hearing these words, you're standing at the same threshold I stood at in that heavenly place. God is extending the same invitation to you that He gave to me. The question is, will you accept it? I need you to do something right now. Say it out loud, wherever you are. I am a fire carrier chosen by God. Say it again. I am a fire carrier chosen by God. Feel those words settle into your spirit, because they're not just affirmations, they're declarations of divine truth. God has already validated you. He has already chosen you. The only permission you need has already been granted by the highest authority in existence. Now here's what you need to do next. First, release your need for religious approval. Stop waiting for church leaders, denominational authorities, or religious communities to validate what God has already declared over you. Your calling didn't come from them, and it doesn't require their blessing. This is perhaps the hardest step, but it's absolutely essential. Second, acknowledge that your mission isn't confined to a church building. It's wherever authentic love is needed. It's in the grocery store when you encounter someone struggling. It's in your workplace when someone needs truth spoken with compassion. It's in the difficult conversations your family needs to have. Fire carriers don't need platforms or pulpits. They need willingness. When I finally accepted this calling, truly accepted it, everything changed. Not my circumstances immediately. I didn't suddenly gain back my lost friendships. The religious community that had rejected me didn't suddenly welcome me back. But my authority shifted. My confidence in who God made me to be became unshakable. I stopped seeking validation from systems and started stepping into divine assignment. And the most remarkable thing happened. I started finding other fire carriers, people who recognized the flame in me because they carried the same fire. We found each other not in traditional church buildings, but in authentic spaces where truth and love could coexist without performance. Your fire carrier family is out there. They're waiting for you to stop hiding and start burning with full authenticity. Now I need to tell you what happened when I came back from that near-death experience. When my heart started beating again, when the doctors who had declared me gone suddenly witnessed impossible vitality, I knew my life would never be the same. I went from questioning my worth, from feeling like a spiritual outsider, to absolutely knowing my divine calling. If you recognized yourself in these 7 signs, you need to understand something crucial. You're not reading this by accident. This isn't random content that happened to cross your path. God is activating fire carriers right now, in this moment, for such a time as this. The world doesn't need more people performing religion. It needs authentic carriers of divine fire who are willing to disrupt comfortable systems with radical love. And here's the grace in all of this. Your identity doesn't disqualify you. Your past doesn't disqualify you. Your questions don't disqualify you. Everything you've been through, every struggle, every doubt, every rejection has been refining your fire, not extinguishing it. I thought my questions about religious systems meant I wasn't spiritual enough. I thought my inability to conform meant something was broken in me. I thought my fire was a problem to be managed. But God showed me the truth. Those very things that made me feel like an outsider were exactly what He needed in a fire carrier. So here's what I need you to do right now. Stop waiting. Start carrying the fire. Stop dimming your flame for people who are afraid of light. Stop apologizing for the truth that burns inside you. Stop seeking permission from systems that were never designed to contain what God placed within you. Your mission begins the moment you accept it, not when you feel ready, not when circumstances align perfectly, not when you finally have all the answers. Now, and I need you to do something else. Share this message. There are other fire carriers out there who feel isolated, who think they're alone in their spiritual intensity. They need to know they're not broken. They're chosen. They need to know there's a community of people who burn with the same divine fire. Comment below and tell me which sign hit you the hardest. Let's build a fire carrier community right here. Let's create the space for authentic spiritual intensity that traditional systems couldn't hold. And if you want more content that challenges comfortable religion and reveals divine truth, if you want to continue this journey of stepping into your fire carrier identity, subscribe to this channel, because I'll be sharing more testimonies, more divine encounters, more truth that burns away religious performance and ignites authentic transformation. But most importantly, I need you to hear this final truth that Jesus spoke to me as I returned to my body. It's the truth I carry with me every single day, the truth that transformed everything. He said, I don't call the qualified. I qualify the called. You are chosen. You are equipped. You are a fire carrier. Now burn.